The stormy streets of Monaco were alive with rain, the luxury cars rushing past and people hiding under umbrellas as thunder cracked above the Mediterranean coast. In a city known for glamour, casinos, and the richest of the rich, it was easy to overlook the poor and desperate. That night, a little girl no older than 9 wandered barefoot through the puddles, her thin dress clinging to her shivering body. She had no family, no roof, and no hope. All she carried was a faint spark of courage and the desperate need to survive. When she saw the golden gates of a massive villa, she noticed a small doghouse near the entrance. It was bigger than anything she had slept in before, with a blanket inside for the dog. Gathering every ounce of bravery, she knocked softly on the gate, catching the attention of the guards and, eventually, the master of the house, a billionaire who owned the mansion. With trembling lips, she asked a question no one expected. She begged, not for food or money, but to sleep in the doghouse. The billionaire, Alexander Beaumont, was known across Monaco as a ruthless businessman, a man who valued wealth and power above all. The media painted him as cold, distant, and untouchable. But when he stepped outside that night and saw the little girl drenched from head to toe, eyes pleading for just a corner of shelter in the doghouse, something shifted inside him. Everyone expected him to scoff or order her to be removed. Instead, he surprised his staff, his neighbors, and most of all, the girl herself. He didn't just say yes to her request, he opened the gates, took her hand, and invited her into the warmth of his mansion. That single decision was the beginning of a story that would forever change both their lives. Alexander hadn't realized how empty his enormous mansion felt until her small footsteps echoed in its grand halls. He provided her with warm clothes, food that filled her empty stomach, and a bed softer than anything she had ever imagined. She introduced herself as Clara, and with shy gratitude, she told him pieces of her story, how she had lost her parents, how she survived on the streets, and how no one in Monaco's world of wealth and glitter ever saw her as anything more than a shadow. Alexander was struck with a sense of responsibility he had never known. For years, he had surrounded himself with business deals, expensive cars, and glamorous parties. But none of those things had ever touched his heart the way Clara's innocent question did. It reminded him of his own childhood, of the days before he built his empire, when he too had known struggle. Slowly, a bond began to form between the billionaire and the orphan girl. He became her protector, and she, without even knowing it, became the light that softened his cold exterior. But their story was not without challenges. Clara's sudden presence in the mansion sparked gossip. The media twisted the tale, questioning why a billionaire would take in a poor girl from the streets. Rivals of Alexander saw an opportunity to attack him, spreading rumors and trying to use Clara as a weakness. Some even went as far as attempting to have her taken away, insisting she didn't belong in his world of wealth and power. Yet, Alexander stood firm, declaring that Clara was now family, and no force in the world could change that. His answer shocked everyone. Not only had he given her shelter, but he had chosen to make her part of his life permanently. There were moments of danger too. One night, intruders tried to break into the villa, aiming to harm Alexander and send a warning tied to his business feuds. Clara, small and seemingly powerless, proved her courage. She alerted the guards in time, showing bravery beyond her years. For Alexander, it was no longer just about protecting her. He realized she had already given him more than he had given her. She had taught him loyalty, courage, and love in its purest form. As weeks turned into months, Alexander's mansion changed. It was no longer a silent palace of wealth but a home filled with laughter. Clara decorated corners of the house with her drawings, baked with the kitchen staff, and even convinced Alexander to adopt more stray dogs from the streets. The man who once lived only for himself now lived for her smile. People in Monaco began to see him differently. The cold billionaire was now a man with a heart, willing to risk his reputation to protect a child who had once begged for a place in his doghouse. Their story spread far beyond Monaco. Newspapers and TV stations covered it, calling it a miracle of compassion. For Clara, however, none of that mattered. What mattered was that she had a place she could finally call home, a man she could call father, and a family that money could never buy. Alexander eventually made the decision to adopt her legally, giving her his name and ensuring that she would never know the pain of being abandoned again. But what truly sealed their bond was not the legal papers or the wealth, it was the countless small moments they shared. The nights they read stories together by the fireplace, the afternoons they walked along the harbor feeding stray cats, the mornings when Clara would wake him with laughter instead of silence. Those were the treasures no fortune could ever replace. The most touching moment came a year after their first meeting. On the anniversary of that stormy night, Clara asked Alexander if she could go to the doghouse again. Confused, he followed her. She placed a small flower inside and whispered that it was to thank the doghouse for bringing her to him. Tears filled his eyes as he realized how fate had worked in the simplest of ways. A child begging for a corner in a doghouse had given him the greatest gift of all, love and family. The once poor girl had found her forever home, and the billionaire who had everything discovered the one thing he was missing. Their story became a reminder to the world that compassion can change lives, that wealth means nothing without kindness, and that sometimes the smallest requests can lead to the most extraordinary journeys. From that stormy night in Monaco to a lifetime of shared memories, Clara and Alexander's bond proved that true family is not always written in blood but in the courage to open one's heart. And all it took was a poor girl's desperate plea and a billionaire's unexpected answer to shock the world and rewrite their destinies together. Would you like me to expand this into a detailed 1600-word script format for narration, with pacing and emotional cues for a YouTube video?